Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Only we don't ask it so aggressively. Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushapy.com. It's a very simple website. It's all one thing. Before we get started, this is a trigger warning. We're going to be talking about messed up stuff, which could involve such subjects as, murder, rape, child abuse, graphic language, and strong graphic content will be contained.
Parental discretion is advised.
There it is, that one. All right, and we got a busy month all of a sudden. Busy several months, the way we space it out. Yeah. But coming down the pike like a head that's severed and going down a pike. I love that phrase. We've got the rest of the Slumber Party Massacre podcast guests. You're going to be introduced to the second one of them in a second here, but later on we're going to be speaking with Nikki Williams and Heather Powell. And after that, authors Danger Slater, Autumn Christian, and Sarah Langen. And after that, director-producer Eduardo Sanchez. And even after that, Josh Mailerman, author of Bird Box. Got a busy couple of months coming up. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yes.
And today, for another guest from the Slumber Party Massacre podcast, we have the pleasure of the company of Miss Carly Sonafelt. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this. Rebecca Reinhardt kind of told us all about it, and then you guys reached out, and I was like, oh, cool. She said she had a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Cool. Before we get into the meat of the interview, do you want to pitch whatever it is you're currently working on?
So yeah, obviously, got the Slumber Party Massacre podcast, the His and Hers movie podcast. Honestly, I have kind of slowed down quite a bit on podcasting. I used to be like a psychopath with it, and I would guest on all kinds of stuff, and I had a bunch of my own podcasts and such, but right now those are the only two that I have active. Slumber Party Massacre will be recording again on, I think, May 7th. Yes. And so you guys can look forward to that. Other than that, I've gotten into, much like Rebecca Reinhardt, I've gotten to like acting in independent horror films. So I do have, I'm going to be, doing some of that coming up. I have some scenes I'm going to be filming for a movie on April 24th. And then I'm also going to be doing a different movie on May 11th. And then once that's all said and done, though, of course, I'll be advertising that stuff more. But as for podcasting, I've been kind of quiet, honestly, because my work schedule and everything has really kind of affected like how much free time I have to do this stuff, unfortunately. But yeah, just look out for Slumber Party Massacre, as always. That's kind of the main one I got going on right now.
We'll put together a bio page for you, and we can link to whatever it is that you want to link to, and we'll talk about that more offline. But so I don't know if you listened to one of our episodes or not, but the basic theme of the call is we'll talk about your love of horror, coming at it from three different directions: your childhood years, your teenage years, and then your adult years. And coming at it from these different directions sometimes triggers memories that you'd forgotten. But that said, it's not meant to be a therapy session. So if there's anything that you don't want to talk about, we just say pass and we'll move on. But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Well, I saw my first scary movie. According to my mother, I was 3 years old, and she put me to bed, and she was watching just the original Halloween, nothing too crazy in the living room, but I kept waking up and coming in there and was just kind of mesmerized by it. And she was like, no, you're not supposed to be watching this stuff. But then she kind of realized like I was into it. So she was like, okay, whatever, and let me watch it. Yeah. So I, pretty much fell in love with that film. Soon after that, she allowed me to watch Scream, because, my mom, she wasn't like a huge horror fan. She liked the basic slashers, but even now she's just very weak stomach. She doesn't really like gore or torture or anything super bloody or anything like that. So movies like Halloween.
Horror light.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Like even today, she like calls me up and she's like, oh, that movie was gross. And I was like, nothing. No, like it really wasn't. So yeah, I ended up watching Scream, loved that, and I watched a lot of slashers pretty much growing up, and then as I got when I was probably 5, it would have been, is when The Ring came out, and I probably saw that a year later when I was 6, and I got into like spooky supernatural films and things, and I just remember like it was the thrill of hiding. Like I had my hands over my eyes the whole time during these movies. I wasn't the type of kid that, could just watch anything and not be fazed by it, but that's what I liked about it, is the scary aspects. And I remember going to my grandma, she was babysitting me, and I brought Scream over and wanted to watch it, and she turned it off after the intro. She was like, "Oh, you're hiding from it. Like you don't even, this is horrible." And then she put on like Dora the Explorer, and I was like mad the whole night. So yeah, that was a thing. And then what else? I remember showing my friend, my childhood best friend that I still talk to today. I showed her Halloween H2O, and she was traumatized by it and went home and had nightmares. And my mom was always upset. She was like, "These people are going to think I'm like an inappropriate parent letting their kids watch this stuff." But whatever. To me, it was like, I don't know. Like I was like, I never really had nightmares or anything of horror movies. So it's not like they were traumatizing to me like a lot of other kids who just, would be up late at night thinking about them. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else from the childhood days. It's just pretty much like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine, all the early 2000s, late 90s movies were kind of ones that I have a lot of nostalgia for, like Cherry Falls. A lot of these movies aren't even that good nowadays, but I'm still
like you said, there's that nostalgia feel for it. Yeah, so it gets a pass.
Right.
Let's start with the first 3 that you mentioned: Halloween, Scream, and The Ring. What did you like about Halloween?
I don't really know. Like when I really think about it, I don't know what it was about Halloween that dragged me in so much. I think it wasn't overly gross or anything like that. So, and as a kid, I didn't really want to see anything super gross. Like I can handle that stuff a lot better now, but that wasn't really my cup of tea back then. The kills, you didn't really see too much blood or gore or anything like that. It was just very simple. So it wasn't overly terrifying for someone my age. And it was just one that was very easy for me to go back to again and again. So yeah, I guess it just had a rewatchability factor that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. What about Scream?
I'm trying to think. I probably ended up liking that one more as time went on. As the years kind of went on, I started understanding the references and stuff more in it, because there's so many references to older horror films. And I always say Scream, actually, I believe I saw that before Friday the 13th. So Scream actually spoiled the original Friday the 13th for me, when, they're like, it's the mother and then you're wrong and all that stuff. So, but
spoilers.
Yeah. yeah. No, but Scream, I think it was, to me, it was like very similar to Halloween. And that's a weird thing too. When you're a kid, I feel like I can't differentiate, obviously Scream is from the late 90s and then Halloween was from the late 70s. But to me, it's like, all that stuff seemed the same to me. Like the 70s, 80s, and 90s all kind of looked and ran the same. And I didn't really understand that there was any difference in them, or even that Scream was just pretty much a satire in a way of those older films. But I just, I really like the characters in Scream, I remember. And that one was definitely a bit more gory at times and brutal with the kills. And I probably started watching that more. Like I said, I saw Halloween for the first time when I was like 3, but Scream I probably saw when I was, the ripe old age of 6 or 7 or something like that, and going forward. So I was more into it, and I think I found it scarier than Halloween. As I said, I was pretty much hiding behind my hands the entire intro of that film, and that's, was triggering to my grandmother and stuff like that. But I think I just liked it because it was, I really found it spooky. And it's one of those things where I watch it now and I'm like, oh, I used to like hide, behind my hands through this whole thing. And like, there wasn't even scary stuff happening in certain parts, but in my head, it was just like really terrifying the whole way through. And that's kind of, it was just like the thrill of being scared back then, I guess.
You mentioned that you like the characters in Scream. What did you like about the characters?
I think it's just like I always liked Stu. I thought he was like funny, and Randy, of course. I just thought they were very eccentric, fun characters, and like I said, even as a kid, even though I wasn't really aware that they were kind of doing like dorky, just satire and callbacks to older horror films, I just took them as fun characters. Where in a movie like Halloween, they're kind of just basic teenagers, and this one, it's like, I guess I was really into, Randy and all his movie knowledge and stuff like that. And then just Stu and Billy kind of going back and forth like, oh, no one said you were the killer and blah, 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 like that type of stuff. It's stuff that I probably didn't understand why I liked it at the time, but now it's like I do understand more. They were just, there was a purpose for why they were acting the way they were acting, and they were very, aware of horror films and stuff like that, because in their world, horror was, movies like Halloween were obviously real in their world. They were movies to them, so it obviously makes them different characters than someone like in Halloween that's just a basic teenager, and horror movies like that don't exist, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I guess. The main thing I guess I'm picking up on it there is that, like you said, at the time you didn't realize that it was satire, so you're just picking up on the eccentricity of the character.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Fair enough. What about The Ring?
The Ring, I remember my two of my close friends, they were brother and sister, and they were telling me about it. They were like, oh, The Ring is so scary. Like that. Have you seen The Ring? Because they knew I like scary movies, and I think I said I was 6. I was probably more like 8 at that time. So The Ring was probably 2 or 3 years old at that point. But so then I was really interested. I forget how I ended up actually getting to watch it, but I did. I don't know if my mother rented it for me, or if those guys ended up showing it to me, or I borrowed it, or what. But that movie, now that's one that traumatized me, because, I'm watching it. That's another one that's kind of slow moving, and I could see people maybe being bored by it because it's like 2 hours long, and it's one of those ones where it's like, it just has like an eerie atmosphere, and what you're not seeing is kind of the scary elements to it, unlike the horrible sequel where they overdo showing some more and stuff like that. But I just remember being in my mom and dad's bedroom watching it, because I think they had the only VCR. We still had like VCR, and it was the only VCR in the house.
Spookier.
Yeah. You would put the VHS tape in the player, and before the previews to like other movies would play, they played the tape, the cursed tape, and I was like,
that's
what
like the
is
first
this?
thing that comes on when you put it in.
Yeah,
So
I was like, what the hell? And then and then you also get a preview. I remember there was a preview on that tape for Ringu, like, the Japanese version. I was like, what the heck is this? Like, I didn't, I wasn't really familiar with foreign films. I was like, okay, this is the same movie, but like Japanese. So yeah, the cursed tape, that in itself was like, oh my God, what am I about to watch? And then, but I remember getting through the movie, and I thought it was pretty creepy. I was really into it. And then I got to the part where, Noah's sitting in the room, and the tape comes on, and it's her coming out of the well, and she's walking towards the screen. And I was like, oh, this is creepy. And I think I got up to get a drink or pee or something, like really quick. And then I come back in, and she's on his floor, like in his office or whatever. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I think I like screamed and cried and like ran out of the room. I was like, oh my God, she's like in his house. Like, she was like, when I was in there originally, she was just on TV, and now she's on his floor crawling after him. And that was horrifying to me. And I think I turned it off and didn't finish it. Then I went back to it a little bit later, and that became another one that I ended up watching on repeat. And that's kind of one that I actually, that followed me into like middle school times. Like, I was really into that film more so in like, junior high era than elementary school. But that was really scary to me compared to that really topped movies like Halloween or Scream or any slasher film. I was just floored by that. And I think that movie still holds up. I do think, the CG and stuff on her face is a little wonky and
a little bit. It's not terrible though.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing ever, but I think the movie as a whole still holds up pretty well. I still am a pretty big fan of it.
You mentioned that it sort of traumatized you. What traumatized you about it?
I don't know what's so scary about that girl with hair covering her face. I guess it's just the idea of not knowing what's behind it, which, they give that away, obviously, whenever, again, the CG face. But it's just the look of characters like Samara or Kayako from The Grudge. And I don't know what it is. It's like, why is your hair over your face? Like, it's just such a weird concept to me. And that really creeped me out. I'd never seen anything like that before. And then the idea of her coming out of the TV and, being just this ghost that can come out of the television and be all of a sudden in your face. Like, I think I just put myself in that position. Like, oh my God, like I would be I wouldn't be able to move or anything. I would just do what he did and fall backwards and get killed. So I think it was the elements of, you probably can't get away from this ghostly, terrifying girl, as opposed to a killer like Michael Myers, who kind of walks slow and he's a real person. It was like the whole paranormal aspect of it all.
Okay. You mentioned that your mom liked horror, but it was more like low-level type horror. Is there anybody in your family who was more of a horror fan?
Not really, not like any more hardcore than my mom, I would say.
Okay.
My Aunt Neely, she, that's my dad's sister. She, I know, liked horror movies, but it was the same thing as my mom. She loved Scream, Halloween, Friday the 13th, all that fun stuff. She named her daughter, my cousin Sydney, and I just found out it was because of Scream that she named her Sydney, so I thought that was pretty cool. So, my dad, I guess you could say, he introduced me to movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and
Points for Dad.
Yeah. I was 13 at that time, so I was a little, I was more mature then, but we watched that together, and he was like, "Oh, this is the best," and he knew of more. I don't want to say obscure films, but like TCM, that's something my mom would not want to watch. She thought that was gross. Anything with cannibalism and stuff like that, she thought was just too much, even though again, TCM, you don't actually see too much in that film. It's all not kind really, of in your head. Yeah.
Implied.
So he showed me that. He showed me Burnt Offerings. He showed me Duel. He showed me Deliverance, Joyride, The Hitcher, different things like that. So my dad kind of showed me more variety, but again, he's not like a massive horror fan. They just happen to be films that he saw when he was growing up or a kid, and they creeped him out, and he was like, "Oh, you'll like this." So, but yeah, other than that, no one's really a massive horror fan. I'm kind of like the oddball who got super into it as I grew older.
Well, I mean, even having your mom and dad support it in any fashion is beneficial. I mean, it sounds like they were at least somewhat supportive of your love of the stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't really care too much about what I watched. I mean, there was certain stuff like my dad always said, like, "Oh, you can't watch I Spit on Your Grave," and then stuff like Deliverance. Like I remember him making me go stand in the kitchen during the whole rape scene in that film, and he was like, "Yeah, you can't watch this, so just go stand in there, then come back in when I tell you it's safe." So there was stuff like that, but other than they didn't shelter me or tell me like "Ooh, this is gonna ruin your life" or anything like that, and force me to watch just Disney movies and stuff. So I am glad that they gave me freedom. Not that there's anything wrong with Disney, but I like horror.
Did you have any really scary dreams when you were a kid?
I did used to have recurring dreams of running through my neighborhood, and Michael Myers would be following me, but he would be, and in dreams, a lot of people, they can't run, so it's like I'd be running in slow motion and stuff, but he was also going slow, because in the movies he's pretty slow walking, so he'd be walking after me and I would see him and then I would get pretty far away, but then he would always be kind of lurking and I could never like fully get away no matter how far away I got in the neighborhood. So but that was always the extent of it. It never got to where, oh, he caught me and stabbed me or anything like that. It would always just be like me running away in slow motion and looking back and seeing him like a few blocks down still coming. So that's still, I've still had that dream, like, in recent years, I think. And it's not overly terrifying or anything like that, but it's just like, it's scary to not get away from someone.
Be nice to have a lucid version of that dream, though, where you can be like, hey, what's up?
Right.
I like your movies. You want to get a pizza or something? Or
I always want that to happen. Like, I've never been able to really have a lucid dream. I've always wanted it to happen. I would love to take control and be like, this is my dream.
Right?
Get out of here. Yeah.
Was there ever a time when you were actually terrified of something as a child? In real life?
Let me think. I've never really... not really. I don't think. Like, I've never had any scary... Like, you always hear people having, like, paranormal experiences. I never had that happen. I always wanted that to happen to me, but that's never happened. I've never had any incidents of sketchy people trying to break in or anything like that. Just nothing too out of the ordinary, really. Well, that's not true. Like, I've had like kind of a messed up childhood in some regards, but nothing has ever really scared me to where I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm actually in a horror movie right now type of deal, I guess. Like, nothing really stands out.
When you mentioned messed up, do you want to briefly talk about, messed up in what way?
Just I had, my dad kind of had some drinking problems and pill problems, and he had some sort of sketchy friends that I would be around a lot, but none of them, like, I never felt in danger as a kid or anything like that. Like, I was trying to think of, like, if anyone ever made me uncomfortable or freaked me out or anything. And then, my parents would fight and stuff like that, and then there was different things like that would happen, but I never felt like my life was in danger or I was scared. It was just kind of stuff, I guess. And these people were always nice to me. They were just, I realize now later in life, like, oh, some of these people were probably scummy and sketchy and not great to have around. But yeah, nothing ever.
At least not dangerous to you, at least.
Right, yeah. Luckily, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Moving into teenage years. So you mentioned TCM with Dad, Burnt Offerings, Joyride, Conjuring, Insidious, I heard you mention. Were those all in the teenage years, or did some of those come later?
Joyride probably came a little earlier than the teen years, but yeah, pretty much all of those. Like TCM, like I said, I was 13. Burnt Offerings, I was probably 12 or 13. Because there was a stream of time where my dad and I would have like sort of movie nights going on every week, and I remember watching a bunch of this stuff like at the same time period. And then of course Insidious, that came out in 2010, I think. So again, yeah, I would have been 13 then. 2010 or 2012, I don't remember. But Insidious was one I saw that in the theater, I believe, and that scared the crap out of me. And then that's one that followed me into the teenage years, because my friend, that was like a really big movie among friend groups. Like, that was when we always put on the TV and watched as background or just for fun. And then we would always play like that Tiptoe Through the Tulips song.
I was going to ask, but that still creeps you out to this day, right?
Oh yeah, that was like, that's such a perfect song for that movie. It was so fitting. And I remember one night we were all at my place, me and some friends, and we turned off the lights and played that song, and kind of like we're just chasing each other around and doing stuff like that. So, that movie, again, like I said, The Conjuring, that one wasn't as prominent. The Conjuring has kind of grown on me more as an adult actually, but Insidious, so that was like the big one I remember. And just like the first one, I don't recall ever even talking about I don't even remember the second one too much. I've only seen that movie like once, and then the Paranormal Activity movies, those were obviously coming out right when I was in high school, kind of one after another, middle school and high school. And I always thought they were kind of dumb and a letdown, but then they became movies that we would sort of marathon at a friend's house and just have on in the background. And, some of them did grow on me. I did end up finding them rather effective and creepy, but it was like I remember the hype of Paranormal Activity and those commercials of people just being like, oh, in the theater, and you didn't actually see the film, and they made it seem like the scariest thing in the world. Then I went to see it with my mother, and we were both like, what? But yeah, Insidious, Paranormal Activity, that kind of sums up the teen years for the most part.
Okay, so if we talked about Insidious, like, is there one scene that jumps out to you and like
that one? I mean,
asking her, Chris, not you.
Well, I mean, we've already kind of discussed it, the tiptoe through the tulip scene.
Yeah, but honestly, yeah, that is. I was about to mention that scene, then I forgot that's the scene with the tiptoe through the tulip song. Yeah, that scene where it's like broad daylight and she sees that whatever ghostly person thingy running around in her house, and she's like, what the F, and kind of looking around at it. That's disturbing to me. It was really creepy. It's one of those things where it wasn't like a jump scare type scare, like with, I think the famous scene from that movie, of course, is where that demon creature is behind Patrick Wilson's head. But yeah, that the scene where she sees that, I don't even know what you call it, running around, that just really creeped me out, because it's like broad daylight. It's like she kind of has this look on her face like, am I really seeing this? And yeah, that creeped me out quite a bit. That's what I like about that movie. It wasn't all just jump scares. It was just kind of like weird, unsettling things kind of happening throughout.
What was unsettling about that scene to you?
Again, like, it was broad daylight, so you're not, everyone assumes scary things only happen at night. The person,
just the unexpectedness of it.
Yeah, and it's like this little person. You're like, is that a ghost? Is that a real person? And they're kind of just running around, and it all just felt very like, am I really seeing it? Just very weird and uncomfortable. And yeah, that part just always kind of stuck out to me.
What about Paranormal Activity movies? Is there one scene that jumped out to you from those?
I think in part 3, that one was probably my favorite, and I believe it's in that one where the camera keeps going back and forth, and you see that the white sheet chilling there, and all of a sudden it goes to the white sheet, and the sheet just kind of falls on the ground, and there's no underneath it. That was really creepy to me. There's definitely a few moments in that movie that creeped me out, but that one always stood out to me. That freaks me out. Like, it's under a white sheet, so it looks like an old-fashioned ghost costume, and then it just kind of crumbles to the ground. Like, oh, there was clearly an actual ghost under there. Great. So yeah, I always like that.
Magic trick.
Right.
So just looking back through some of the things that we've talked about so far in the childhood and teenage years, like looking for common themes, and it seems like paranormal is so far a theme. Things that, like, I don't want to use the word breaking of rules, because it's kind of that, but not, like things that shouldn't be there but are, or I don't know if I'm making any sense with that.
I get what you're saying, but I can't put it into good words either. Like the idea, yeah, paranormal, and just the, I guess, unsettling, uncomfortable, like, that's
something's
out of the ordinary, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into adulthood and see if we come up with anything that clarifies it. So adult years, what would you say would be, if you were to pick like top 2 or 3 impactful things in your adult years?
what happened in my adult years was I got a job at a hotel when I turned 18, like 4 days after graduating. I got this job as a housekeeper. And like I said, in high school, we kind of got out of horror a little bit, and that was kind of that. And then, as soon as you become an adult, you're kind of thrown out to the wolves and trying to figure out what to do with your life and where you're going, and how to maintain friendships and all that fun stuff. So I felt very lost and everything, but I started this job, and then a few months into it, I found out that my supervisor there, who was JP, he really liked horror movies, and it was probably October around Halloween time that I realized it, because he was excited obviously for Halloween, and I ended up doing creeping on his pages and stuff, and I found he had a YouTube channel, and it was like all horror related, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually kind of cool. It kind of like triggered the fact that I was like, that was kind of a big part of my life growing up, and then I kind of lost the fandom a little bit. But so one thing kind of led to another, and he and I became closer friends, and we started talking about horror and stuff, and he kind of basically introduced me to more movies I had never seen, and we eventually ended up going to movies together. And it's just, adulthood is where it all kind of hit, because then I ended up in these group pages. His podcast is 22 Shots of Moods and Horror. I ended up in that group page, as well as like Exploding Heads and the Skeleton Crew, and just all these different horror podcast groups. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. All these people talk to each other, and they all have the same love of horror movies, and they all have massive collections or podcasts or YouTube channels on the topic. And it was like a whole new world opened up, because to be honest, when I was a teenager, I remember I had some friends who would say, oh, my online friend from like Quebec is talking to me. And I'm like, kind of rolling my eyes, like, like online friends aren't real. I was one of those.
Yeah, okay. Your online friend, sure.
Right, yeah. You guys are never gonna like.
My girlfriend goes to another school.
Right, yeah,
she's real.
Yeah, but I kind of had that mentality of like, you're like, and I feel bad saying it, but it's like, I thought like, you're a loser. Like, you have all these online friends that like have a common interest, like anime or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's lame, because you couldn't find them in real life. And then here I am now with all these. So I was like, because I remember JP, he would always be on his phone with all these group chats too. And I'm like, how can you possibly be talking to like these random people for all these hours of the day? And then I obviously started doing it. Him and I ended up making a podcast together called the Netflix and Chill Horror Podcast, which, we kind of put an end to that. And now we have the His and Hers podcast. But that's kind of how I ended up involved in these groups in general when I was 19 at that time. I'm 25 now. And yeah, just so, I mean, it's hard to even pinpoint. Like, there's been so many movies in the past decade that have been so good. It's like, I can't even tell you, like, I've seen so much more horror now than, like I said, the only films that stood out to me in high school were like those two franchise films, Insidious and Paranormal Activity, where now it's like I can name a million, like Hereditary or The Witch, or freaking fun films like
Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Or What We Do in the Shadows, that's another good one.
Yeah.
But there's so much, like, I feel like so much has happened in my adult years so far that it's like actually kind of overwhelming. But so this is where it like all really took off again. Like, there was like a hiatus in high school, and then this is kind of, I'm kind of living it now as a daily life.
I understand that, as an adult and being introduced to a lot more stuff, there's a lot to choose from. But from sort of a psychological standpoint, at least personally, I've found that the first things that come to mind for a good reason. And so if we kind of dig into them, that sometimes there's usually something good to be found there. And so the first three that you mentioned were Hereditary, Witch, and What We Do in the Shadows. What did you like about Hereditary?
Hereditary was very creepy to me. That's one I brought that friend I mentioned, Kaylee, who likes just pretty much Emily likes stuff that comes to the theater. I remember I went with her, JP, and then a few other people, and I was just like enthralled by the acting in it and the eerie vibes to it. I remember like my friend, like Kaylee, she didn't care for it too much at the end, and I could kind of understand because that movie was very hyped. It was kind of like, oh, it's the brand new Exorcist. It's like as scary as that film, but
didn't like it at the end, huh?
Yeah.
I dragged my friends to it too, and everyone hated it.
Yeah,
At the end.
Yeah. Right. The movie, how do you like it? I guess you could say it moves a little slow, but it really, I don't know. To me, it doesn't. Like, I don't mind. Like, Midsommar, for me, that one could afford to be cut down a little bit, even though I do think that movie is very good as well. But Hereditary, to me, just kind of is so creepy throughout. I mean, just the little girl in general, not to make, I know she has like some sort of facial deformity in real life, but she just has like that creepy look to her to begin with. And just like I said, the acting, the part where the mom flips out on the son at the dinner table and stuff like that, giant monologues where it just seems so realistic and powerful, really kind of drags me in, and I'm usually really sold on it. So that movie I enjoyed. Unfortunately, my theater experience with that one turned out to be pretty bad because we were in front of like 13-year-olds who had gone to see it. So by the end of the movie, there's a lot of naked people and penises and such, and they're kind of like, oh no, we've never seen those before, and we ended up like almost fist fighting them. Like, we turned around and screamed at them, so it kind of ruined the ending. I watched it later on Blu-ray, and I was like, oh, this is what I missed. Like, it was so nice to watch it in solidarity, and I was like, wow, this is a great unsettling film. And then stuff like The Witch. I did not like The Witch the first time I saw it. I'm not a big period piece person. Yeah. I've come around quite a bit on them. Not even quite a bit, honestly. I'm still kind of like lame about it. But The Witch is one that I watched again later down the line, and I was like, oh, this movie honestly is rather perfect. And that's one that I think benefited from watching it by myself at home and not in a theater setting, because you can't really understand what they're saying too much in the theater. And so that one just had like a great atmosphere. I thought it was very historically accurate from, I mean, what do I know? But like, I know like he really put a lot of effort into that dialect. And just the fact that that movie even made it to the theater is crazy, because that's another thing of the times today. You see more obscure films like that in the theater setting, where back in like the 2000s, all you got was like hardcore slashers or spooky ghost movies and stuff. Like, you weren't really getting anything like this. So,
well, hang on. You said two things about Hereditary that I wanted to go back to, and let's talk about that before we go on to The Witch.
Alrighty.
So, the two things that you mentioned about Hereditary that I thought were kind of interesting. You mentioned being enthralled by the acting. What did you mean by that?
Just it was very intense and really had a way of taking you in. Like I said, the part where the mom, it's like such a tense scene when they're all having dinner, and then the boy's like, is something on your mind, Mom? And she just kind of flips out on him and is like, your sister's dead, and she's not. It's just so like brutal and over the top, and I'm just watching it mesmerized, and it feels very much to me, it actually feels like a real mom flipping out, like it would be something that would happen in real life. And then that part where he does what he does and what happens to his sister, and you get that huge long shot of him just kind of staring out the window,
and his foot just slowly releases off the brake, like, I'm just gonna pretend this didn't happen,
right?
But there are no words, and you're right, it's just I guess the answer you're probably getting to is the acting is very well done.
Yeah, it's very, again, I feel like that's some people are like, why would you just sit there? But I feel like I might do, like, if I had something that horrible happen and I knew it happened, I would probably just sit there like, what do I do now? Like, do I kill myself? Do I drive away? Do I go to bed? Do I just sit here for the rest of my life? Like,
and he kind of turtles up and fugue states into the most default, easiest option, which is I'm just going to ignore it. It didn't happen.
Yep.
just keep driving.
Yeah, good coping mechanism there.
Yeah.
And then it's like the horror. He wakes up the next day, and it's like the reality of, oh, that did happen, kind of sets in. So
and
there's just so many
get ants.
Oh no.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is you mentioned monologues. You like monologues?
Like just big, is that the word for it? Just big moments of people kind of talking by themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, be a monologue. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it you like about those?
I think it showcases someone's acting abilities a good bit, and I think you get that with the mom character in that moment where she flips out on the son, and also in the moments where that time when she goes to like the group therapy session thing, and she just sits down, and she's never done this before, but she's just like, yeah, my dad, he like starved himself to death, and my mom was crazy and all this like stuff, and it's kind of like zoned in on her. I feel like that stuff just can really captivate you if the acting is done right. You know, if the actor's not good at acting, then I'm kind of like, okay, let's move on to the next scene. But I think this movie does a really good job with showcasing the acting abilities.
So trying to separate the cerebral from the emotional, it sounds like what you're saying is that an actor who is good at monologuing is able to relay intensity of emotion to you. That it sounds like it's the intensity of the emotion that you're keying into, not so much the monologue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I guess, anyone can just, I could sit here and tell you a big monologue in a monotone voice and be boring.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is you're keying into the intensity. You're saying this person is doing a good job because I'm feeling something.
Right, yeah.
But it's the feeling something that's the important part to you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was there something, what was the emotion you were feeling during the monologue?
It's kind of like uncomfortable in a way, because she, in particular, that part where she's just kind of letting out all her family issues and such. It's just, I kind of put myself in the place of all the other people sitting around there, and obviously it's a safe place and they're allowed to talk about whatever they want, but they're probably all thinking like, oh shit, like, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, like I wonder if anyone's gonna even say anything after she's done spewing all this, which I don't even think. I think it kind of goes to a different scene after that. I don't remember, but so yeah, I kind of feel just like uneasy and uncomfortable, but at the same time, I've had experience like this in real life where someone will just spew all this intense stuff to me, and I'm just kind of like, ooh, okay, like we're going there.
Unloading.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going now on to The Witch. What did you like about The Witch?
I thought it was very accurate with the like I said, I mean, I wasn't there, I don't know how these people acted back then, but I feel like in terms of period pieces, they're very hard to make, and the direct Robert Eggers clearly he knows what he's doing, and this is clearly his passion, and you could feel that in the film. I know that they shot it with all just natural lighting, and I thought that was very effective in making it as realistic looking as possible. So pretty much the authenticity of the film is a lot of what I like, but I also enjoyed, like I said, when I first saw it, I didn't care for it. I didn't care for period pieces too much, and I still kind of am half and half on them for the most part, mainly because I can't relate to the stuff they're doing in those movies.
It's funny that you're about to go in that direction, because that's where I wanted to point you. As I was going to say, it's kind of, you're seeing, it sounds like you're saying, man, I'm having trouble with words. It's all of a sudden, it sounds like you're having the same thing as with the monologues a second ago. It's like you're talking about the authenticity helping you connect to the emotion, but you haven't gotten to the emotion yet. So what was the emotional content that triggered you in The Witch?
I think like once I gave it like another watch, the thing that kind of unnerves me in The Witch is how big they are on religion. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I know back then it's like that is all people banked on was God and hell, and you have to do everything right or else you're going to hell, and witchcraft is real and all these evil demonic things are real. And it's just like I remember there's a part in that movie where the baby ends up dying, of course, and there's a part where the mother breaks down to the husband and she's like, our baby is in hell because we didn't get him baptized before he died. And I was like, that is just like it's just like so upsetting to me that people think that way. And just you can betray your family and your daughter, your kids so easily if you think that they might have some evil spirit in them, which might not even be true, or it might be true. And it just, that whole element really kind of sunk
Dangerous
in with
times.
me. Yeah. It was like very, like, not only are you probably going to die of,
Cholera
a common cold back then, but you have to worry about dying because your family decides to hang you or something because they think you're bewitched.
It's not even just back then. I mean, we talked to Jeremiah Rosario. He said he had an exorcism performed on him when he was a baby because he was lactose intolerant.
Yep.
That's terrifying.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine. Sorry if you hear, I live in like a crime area. But so anything where it's like all about belief and the belief makes it so it tears your whole family apart, that really freaks me out. And that really that's the horror of The Witch to me.
Beliefs can be scary, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Or what they lead people to do. What about What We Do in the Shadows?
Now that one is just funny. That's one that I always thought, like, I'm not going to like this. That came out in like 2015. I didn't see it until just probably like 3 years ago or something. But I always pictured it being, I mean, which it is, but I thought like, oh, this is going to parody I thought it was going to be like scary movie type of parody where I'm not going to understand any of the content because I haven't seen maybe some of these vampire films. So I was not very interested. And then a podcasting friend, Brandon Orlick, actually, I think he's the one who sent me the movie on Blu-ray one day, and I was like, okay, I'll check this out, whatever. And I was laughing out loud throughout the whole thing. And it's so much fun. And it's also it's definitely more comedy than horror, but it's also pretty bloody at times. Like there's a part where he's trying to, turn the girl into a vampire and he gets carried away and he, hits her main artery and she just bleeds out all over the floor. And but it's like hilarious at the same time.
Like comedic levels of blood spurting.
Yeah. And like I said, vampire films aren't like my top favorite genre or anything, but I still appreciate, like, I knew all the tropes and stuff they were doing. It wasn't like it wasn't stuff that you couldn't understand. Even if you haven't seen these movies, you probably have heard of the different tropes and such. Like you have to be invited in and they have trouble getting into clubs because no one invites them in. And like all that stuff was just it's really funny to me. And that's a movie that I enjoy putting on if I'm having like a bad day or I'm in a bad mood and I don't want to watch anything too serious, because horror movies sometimes they can be depressing if you're not in the right mood and it's a serious film. Like I'm not going to curl up to The Witch if I'm severely depressed or something, but this movie is just very funny and I can watch it over and over again.
Okay. Let's see. So we definitely did mention that you have found some horror crew as an adult. That's good. Any reoccurring dreams as an adult other than the Michael Myers one?
Not like I often have dreams where I'm trying to run away from something, or there's like something dangerous going on in my neighborhood and I'm like running in slow motion and then I could like jump on top of buildings all of a sudden or do all this crazy stuff. But that kind of goes hand in hand with the Michael Myers dream, though. I always just have dreams where I'm running away and I can't quite get away. But at the same time, nothing bad ever happens to me. It's just like the scariness of I can't get away from whatever that's following me.
Is there some common element in the things that you're trying to run away from?
There has been times where it's been like someone with a chainsaw. I don't know if it's like in my head it's not like Leatherface, but it's like I'm running away from someone with a chainsaw. And I feel like I have that more so now than the Michael Myers dream. It's usually a bad guy, or I have had dreams where people break into my house and I, like jump out my window or something and I'm running away in the neighborhood, and then eventually they realize like I got out of the house and then they're following me and these dreams are always like in my head, I'm still living with my parents and I like jump out the window and I'm like, peace out. And then I'm running away and I'm like, geez, I hope they didn't kill my parents. Like it's like, so I do it. Like, I guess home invasion type dreams are kind of go hand in hand with that with the running away aspect. But
well, good to know if the, shit ever hits the fan, then your priorities are in order.
To be honest, I can't even say, like in real life, I probably would do that too. Cause I don't want to die. I was just like, yeah, same. Just jump out the window. And every man for themselves at that point.
Regroup later.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. The last bunch of questions here that we ask, these are not just related to horror. They could touch on any genre, and it's not just any particular part of your life. It's over your whole life. The first two questions I'm going to give them to you at the same time because it could be the same answer for both, or it could be a slightly different answer for either. But what movie would you say you've watched more times than any other, and what movie would you say is your favorite movie?
Movie that I've watched more times than any other? I mean, I've watched The Shawshank Redemption quite a bit in my lifetime, so that's probably up there. My favorite movie, which is a horror film, would probably be The Shining. But I don't think I've watched that one as much. Like Shawshank's one of those films that's just like on TV and you kind of like have no choice but to watch it over and over again when it's on. So The Shining, though, I've always pegged that as my favorite horror film of all time, and probably just my favorite movie of all time. I find it very rewatchable, and it's a long movie, but to me it always flies by, and it really kind of, I'm always super into it while I'm watching it. I could put it on as background, but then I go to do something and I feel like I'm missing parts. And, it's one of those movies where you already know what's happening, but you don't want to walk away from the screen. So, yeah, that I would peg that as my favorite.
What do you like about The Shining? I mean, you've mentioned some little bits and pieces, but like emotionally speaking, what jumps out to you from The Shining?
One big thing is I think the score in that film is pretty fantastic. There could be nothing going on at all, and it just kind of like, it'll be like, and like, it's like nothing really but it really kind of moves the film. I think if it didn't have that score, it might have came across as a little more slow, but it makes it suspenseful, even if nothing necessarily is happening. I love Jack Nicholson in the movie. I don't care about the whole, like, oh, he was crazy from the beginning stuff that people will complain about. I just, I don't care. I never read the book, to be honest, so.
But focusing on emotions, like for score, you mentioned suspense, that I guess could be an emotion or tension. What's the emotion related to Jack?
Insanity.
Yeah,
it's not a fear though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an
emotion. Yeah. Discontent. Yeah, I guess fear kind of is the thing, because he just looks crazy the whole film, and you're just like, something's gonna happen, and you feel bad for his family, and you just know, because you get
the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, because you get the few moments where he's like rude to his wife and kind of like snaps on her, even though she is kind of annoying. I probably would too. But it's like, and then the intensity where, you get that scene where Danny goes up to get his fire truck or something, and his dad is awake in the bedroom, and just kind of, they have that like awkward sort of moment where the dad's like, oh, I love this place. And, Danny's just kind of like, yeah, okay, Dad. And I guess I'm discontent. uncomfort and
discomfort.
fear. Yeah,
There's
discomfort.
a lot of pregnant pauses and a lot of tension. And you're right, just the soundtrack alone with the stabs and just the out of nowhere off keys. Just it's Kubrick film, man. It's good.
Yes, indeed.
So, what do you like about Shawshank?
Shawshank is just
everything.
Yeah. I know, that's another one where it's like, what do I even like about it? It's one of those ones that draws me in, and I don't know what makes a movie so rewatchable, but that film you can watch over and over. I think it's like I like films that are a big story that kind of go over a period of time. Like I really like Goodfellas too, where you have him younger and then you're just kind of watching him grow up and all of his friends and all the bad stuff that happens and all the good stuff that happens. That's kind of Shawshank. You're watching this poor guy go through prison for years and years and, establish relationships with people. And I love the whole, voice. Morgan Freeman, of course, is like narrating the film. So that's a good thing right there. But great performances in that film as well. It's just a really good story. Good storyline.
Let's go back to emotions again. What emotions do you feel when you're thinking about Shawshank?
It's actually kind of a depressing movie when I think about it, because it's one where it's like you're just watching these people waste away in prison, and the idea of that does kind of, bother me a good bit. So it's a little depressing, but at the same time, there's different, like, not like comedic moments or anything, but just different quirks and stuff, like with Tim Robbins' character and him, the part where he like turns up the music and stuff, and he's being like trying to get one up on the guards and whatnot, and then the part where he gets like the 3 beers per person for them to do the roof. Like there's like some just small like happy silver linings throughout the movie that I think balance it out pretty well. So it's not like all depressing. It's kind of like, I don't know how to say it. It's kind of like just down the, like, it's not one that I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch this because it's going to make me sad. I don't really feel that. Like, I feel like the characters aren't.
It's got some hope to it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like there you go. Yeah.
It's like an emotional buffet. You have a little bit of everything.
Uh-huh.
No, I can relate. When you said depression, I think that's the emotion I connect with that movie as well. It is a very depressing movie from beginning to end. But like you say, there are moments of hope in there too, which is, I think, what saves it and probably makes it.
Yeah, and you do have a happy ending, technically, with that movie.
See what tonight.
Yeah.
So, do you see any common threads about what kinds of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
I didn't really talk about it too much, honestly, throughout this, but I like movies that are kind of like character study things. Like I mentioned May. I like that film because it's kind of focused on this one girl as she's really like awkward and quirky, and she's, you kind of see her like descend into what she becomes. I like Excision. That's another one that came out.
Good. Everything Richard Bates Jr. does.
Yeah, that is really good stuff. Trying to think of what else. This is more like a slap, but like Maniac, the original and the remake.
I was gonna say, when you mentioned character studies, that was the first thing that pops into my head. Was all right,
really?
Well, Maniac, yeah,
yeah, because I always think like that's like a slasher, but it's really kind of it's like a mixture of both a little bit. So and
Taxi Cab, another
or
Taxi Driver,
taxi. Yeah, I do like Taxi Driver. That's another one my dad actually showed me when I was probably 13. That was in the
So
realm.
what do you like about these character studies?
I just like kind of diving into different people and seeing like what they have going on, not just, you see like a killer outside stabbing people. You don't see them at home having dinner or talking to themselves or anything like that. So like with May in particular, I really love that because she's like really awkward, lonely, kind of sad type of character. And she, you kind of get to see her in her apartment, just talking to her doll. And I just love seeing that aspect because I think there's like some realism to it. I think there are people in this world that unfortunately are like that. And I think we all do, probably weird stuff behind closed doors. And I I feel like a lot of these movies kind of show you stuff like that that's going on. Like in Excision, you got that girl, she just is mentally ill and wants to like have sex on her period and do all this weird stuff, and she's like carving crosses and her, it's just like
She wants to save
disturbing.
her sister too, you know.
Oh yeah. In
by killing
some
her.
way or another. Yeah. But yeah, just there's something disturbing about it. There's something realistic about it. And I just think it adds like an extra layer to films when you dive into the character, especially when it's like the villainous type of character.
Yeah.
Okay, so it gives some background to sort of flesh out what makes it disturbing.
Yeah. Like, yeah. No, American Psycho, that's another good one. That's one that I really enjoy too.
It's curious to me that this has come up because I was thinking other things like we had talked about paranormal and what was the other thing that we mentioned?
I know, I realized like I didn't even really talk about like the films. These are movies that I kind of got into again, like more in adulthood, like the character study type pieces, and I never really knew what to classify them as. And then I started hearing people say that, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's what I enjoy. But slashers and stuff like that are comfort food to me. I think that's kind of how it is for a lot of people. Those are ones that would be like my other choice, just to sit back and watch a good slasher movie. There's a lot that I, of course, have on repeat, like obviously the Friday the 13th films and the Halloween films and Scream, all that fun stuff. And then I always like to find new slashers that I had not seen, like new to me. They could be, 80s or 2000s, whatever, but I always like to seek out different ones and discover something new that may or may not be a hidden gem.
Right. The other common thread that I've been hearing, and particularly once we got to the adult years, you mentioned a couple things that really fit into this are slow burn and tension. Other words that are related to that came up were unnerved, suspense, and discontent. But like just the concept of tension seemed to come up. And as I was scrolling back, I mean, I think that really goes all the way even back to what you said about Halloween. The first Halloween was, the tension of Michael Myers always coming after you, or coming after whatever his target was. And how it wasn't really necessarily a gory movie or compared to today's stuff, but it was just that tension of I'm always coming to get you. And I'm wondering if there's something there that is like a trigger for you.
Yeah, I think it's that's definitely like a scary concept to me as well. And yeah, like you said, as we're getting into like the older times, it's like the slow burn, tension filled films. I do enjoy those too. Now that you mention it, and I think it's because we've gotten so many newer ones throughout these past few years, which I never really considered myself a slow burn fan. I always thought like in my head, it's like slow burn. That just sounds like boring and like it's not really a great word. It's like slow burn. Like, do I really? I feel like that's a way to say like this movie's freaking takes forever to get going. But
well, it's two sides of the coin. It slow burn seems like the word that you would use to be derogatory towards it. But tension would be the word that you would use to say this is the thing I like about it.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, like I feel like a lot of movies I do like actually are kind of slow building, like The Shining, for instance. That one, like I said, it's like 2.5 hours, and it kind of leads up to a big, impactful ending type of thing. So yeah, I definitely.
But it's carrying the tension throughout,
right? Yeah, which
gets you.
Yeah, and again, there are movies that. Where slow burn would be a bad thing if they're not carrying that tension. There are some movies where it's like just too dialogue heavy, but nothing is really meaningful or anything like that. So I think tension definitely is. Tension. Yeah, it lacks. Yeah, there's nothing really carrying it. So yeah, I guess I do like tension, and I guess I am definitely fearful of the idea of something coming after me. Again, I mean, like The Ring, that's even an example. Like that really creeped me out because it's like a spirit, a ghost, coming after
or
you.
the lack of escape.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Escape.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Just, you're kind of screwed either way. You could go hide in your closet, but they're still going to find you.
Powerless.
Yep. It is freaky because it just feels, I put myself in those shoes, like I keep saying. And I think that's what I like to do, like put myself like there and think, what the heck would I do? I don't know.
And that's where I was going to say next, is that that's a very common thing to be afraid of, because I think everybody on some level has some amount of concern about what they would do in a powerless situation.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds like in your case, it seems to have really caught your attention, maybe at just an early age, and maybe there's maybe we may not be able to dig deeper than that. Maybe it's just the fact that you caught onto this tension as an exciting emotion or feeling, and have just tried to seek that out since then, without being able to, like I said, dig any deeper than that, which is fine. There's no need to dig necessarily deeper than that. For some people, it is not any deeper than just, I like the way this feels.
Yeah, I think and I enjoy kind of thinking of like, how would I get out of this situation? Like, when you hear people getting kidnapped and stuff, I always think like, oh, I might do this or that. But then at the same time, like, you always see these movies, you always have like the joke where people are like, no, don't do that. Don't run up the stairs. Don't go hide in the basement.
I would have done that better. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But then I start really thinking, I'm like, would I have done that? Because I think in real life, like when I'm scared in real life, like I'm the type that kind of doesn't handle, like, I kind of pause, and then I think later, like, oh, I should have did this in that situation, but I panicked.
Deer in headlights.
Yeah. So I start thinking like, I probably would have done all this dumb stuff, but at the same time, I'm always trying to think like, now here's what I should do, because you're watching a movie and you're thinking you can actually see all the ways you could get out of a situation where you got to realize like the character is not really seeing that. But so I enjoy kind of thinking my way out of horrifying situations, even though in reality I probably wouldn't, would be screwed. But
so one of the last questions we like to ask here is, why horror? Because aren't there any other number of genres that could put you in tense situations that you'd have to try to think about?
Yeah, I mean, you could say like, okay, I guess action movies, thrillers and such, which I do,
Even dramas.
Yeah,
dramas can be tense too.
Yeah, I guess horror just adds that extra element of the fear, and the fear adds a level of excitement to me. And I know people that don't like horror are just ones who don't like to be scared or fearful, which that's okay. I completely understand. But to me, it's like being scared has always had that level of excitement, and there's just like that extra amping up, where in action movies, some I've observed, I never really feel severe danger for characters, because you're just like, oh, that's like the hero character. They're probably definitely going to get out of the situation, even though it's ridiculous and very unrealistic. But it's like, okay, they jump off a skyscraper, and then an airplane swoops down and gets them last minute type of thing. Like that stuff just is very generic to me, and it just never really meshed with me well. But it really is just a matter of opinion, because people will say that about horror movies too. They'll make fun of it and be like, oh, they're all the same films, like all the maybe all just the subgenres are the same, like all the paranormal films are the same, they all have jump scares. It's
kind of like music. There's certain genres that speak to me and some
right
that don't.
Yeah, like you just can't. That's what makes people so unique. I always think it's so weird, like how we all kind of end up with our own tastes, and I'm just like, why is that? But
that's why we do this show.
Yeah. But yeah, horror just is exciting because of the fear, and like I said, comedy would be my second choice because I like to laugh. But even comedy, though, like a lot of comedies, kind of you watch them once and you laugh out loud, then you watch them again and they kind of lose that charm. So horror for me is very rewatchable.
You mentioned liking funny things too, and I was thinking, how does that fit in? And I think that'd be the release of the tension.
Yeah, definitely. And like a comedy, if there ever was a time where I would get too scared as a kid or something in particular, you kind of run to a comedy TV show or something after watching a scary movie to kind of balance out your fear. Yeah, you're like, okay.
Well, what I mean is, in order to be a comedian, there's the joke that has the setup and then the punchline, and the setup usually involves some sort of tension.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's where the punchline comes in, is because you're expecting this one thing, and then you get something else.
Mm-hmm.
But the expecting of that one thing, there's a tension there. Like, I've built this up, now I'm expecting, and then redirect.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that. I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah.
That definitely makes sense.
So, considering the theme of the podcast, is there anything else that you know about yourself that makes sense or fits into this topic that we haven't talked about? Or is there anything that came up in your mind during the call that we didn't end up getting to speak about?
Just horror has become a huge part of my life, especially into adulthood. Like, it's always been there lingering, but I think it's just, getting to talk with all these different people, like you guys, for instance. I mean, I've never chatted with you before, but now here we are. I love that stuff. It really helps me. If I'm having a bad day or something, you always just kind of have this camaraderie of people that have the same hobbies as you. And collecting horror movies is a big hobby of mine. I love going out and to Goodwills and different thrift stores and finding new films. That's kind of a big thing for me. So, if this is just it's really just become kind of a way of life for me, and I embrace it fully and have a lot of fun with it. And I think I literally don't know what I'd be doing right now if I hadn't, gotten into podcasts and horror films. And I have no idea. I'd probably be pretty boring. So yeah.
Or just watching more films spending more time watching films.
Yeah, I guess just sitting on the couch and loafing away. So yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say, like, horror movies are great. And the horror community is great. They're all nice people, and I just love being part of this world. So,
well, thank you for spending some of your Sunday evening with us, or afternoon.
Yeah, no problem. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been.
We've enjoyed it too. Well, like we said, we'll put together a bio page and link to whatever it is that you want to link to. I think you said the two main things that you were working on were your Slumber Party Massacre podcast, and was it the His and Hers podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to pitch on the way out?
I don't really have. No, I'm pretty boring right now. I don't really have anything. I don't really have anything coming out in recent times.
Oh, so. Well, you did mention the acting. You were doing some acting, but I guess you can't talk about that yet. You said?
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Like like I said, I'm doing. I'm going to be in a movie called Bathtub Shark Attack, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to be
for all those people who were traumatized by Jaws.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then I'm going to be in something called Shingles, the movie, which is like a anthology film, and I just have like a really small cutaway part in that, but it's also cool because Rebecca Reinhardt, obviously,
I think she mentioned that too.
Yep, she's gonna she also has a small role in that, but we're not at the same time. Like, we're not, you know what I mean? Like, but we're gonna be in different scenes. But I think that's pretty cool that we'll both be in the same flick. But obviously these movies haven't like they don't exist yet. Like, we haven't actually but they've like started filming, but they're not made yet. So more to come once stuff starts kind of kicking off there. But so that's a lot of fun. That's something I just started getting into as of last year, and I hope to continue with.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if anybody wants more information on that, like I said, we can link to that on your bio page, and then they can come to you for more information.
All right.
So we're going to say thank you to anybody out there listening. Again, please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. You can visit Carly's bio page there on our episodes page. You can hit us up on social media. Let us know how we're doing. Share this with anybody that you know. If you think we're doing a good job, let us know. Thanks.